Oh, welcome back to Safer Ridge on Sunday, live this morning in Brussels. A bit of breaking news to bring you because we've just heard from the President of the European Council, Donald Tusk. He sent a tweet to say EU27 has endorsed the withdrawal agreement and political declaration on the future EU-UK relations. That news coming in from Donald Tusk that the EU leaders have effectively endorsed the Brexit deal that Theresa May has negotiated. So a bit of good news there from the Prime Minister. And I think it's time now to perhaps reflect a bit on what that means. It's over to the UK Parliament in some ways now, isn't it? Jeremy Corbyn confirming on the show last Sunday that Labour couldn't back the deal that Theresa May is getting signed off today. Well, let's talk now to Labour's Shadow Northern Ireland Secretary Tony Lloyd, who joins us this morning. Thank you for being with us.
It's nice to be with you, Sophie.
So can you just explain specifically what is it that's preventing Labour from backing Theresa May's deal?
Well, there is quite a long list, but let me just give you one or two broad headlines. For example, Labour has said all the way through this, we see the frictionless trade, the jobs first of Brexit. We need to be in a customs union. We need to have single market standards to make sure we see no erosion, for example, of people's rights at work, of consumer standards. We don't want chlorinated chicken coming into the UK, so we need to maintain those standards. We need to make sure that our environmental standards are there. We've got things like uncertainty over the European arrest warrant, which has been so useful to our country in being able to bring criminals back to the UK or sending them out of the UK. There's a long list of things, and of course I'm bound to mention, given the role I've got, the position of Ireland. No long-term certainty about whether there's a border across the island of Ireland or a border down the Irish Sea. It's no wonder that Theresa May's created a coalition which simply will not see this being voted through in Parliament.
Well, let's talk about Ireland specifically, shall we, with your role as Northern Ireland Secretary. You've previously said that a no-deal Brexit would be a gift to those who want to return to violence in Northern Ireland. It would be disastrous and dangerous. If there's no Brexit agreement, the risk of no deal goes up. So by not supporting Theresa May's deal, is Labour not risking that return to violence in Northern Ireland that you're so afraid of?
You're posing, and I understand why, the Theresa May, it's my deal or no deal scenario, but that simply isn't the case, is it? The British Parliament almost certainly has a coalition of the willing that would work round a customs union, work round single market standards of the kind that Labour's advocated, but so have, if you like, a broad swathe of other parties, including a large number of Conservatives. It solves the problem of no border down the Irish Sea, which is so damaging from the DUP's point of view. It solves the problem of no border across the island of Ireland. So, we can build that coalition in the British Parliament, and frankly, actually, it's very hard to believe that the European Union wouldn't see that as a better deal for Europe. It would give frictionless trade from Europe, from the EU into Britain, as well as from the UK into the European Union. So a good deal all round, and that ought to be where we go, and I'm pretty sure that's where Parliament would want us to be.
But how are you going to do that? Because if you're going to get a general election and Labour get in power, you're going to need 2/3 of MPs to vote for it. That's going to be extremely hard to do. And why do you think that after over 2 years of negotiations, you can sort this whole thing out in a few months?
Well, of course, the reality is this, is that the timescales that we now are faced with has been a result of 2 years of Theresa May pandering to the divisions within the Conservative Party, creating red lines, frankly, that should never have been there. But, Michel Barnier, amongst other people, said, look, if the red lines change, the basis for negotiation can change. I paraphrase, but that's pretty much what he said. Of course, we're bound now to say, look, if the deal is voted down in Parliament, we will want the capacity to build a coalition across Parliament for a different kind of deal. The kind of deal I've spelt out, customs union, acceptance of single market standards, and a recognition that on that basis we can build something different. If that has a majority in the House of Commons, I think it would be possible to face the country in a general election, and that would be one way out of it. But it would also be a basis on which to say to the European Union, look, there is a better deal for the EU, and definitely a better deal for the whole of the United Kingdom, Britain and Northern Ireland as well.
Another way out of it would be what some people would suggest should happen, a second referendum. Some people in your own party want to see that taking place. What do you think would be the consequences if we did have a second referendum?
Well, there's a complicated pathway, I think, before we can even contemplate getting there. From Labour's point of view, what we've always said is, look, we want the meaningful vote in Parliament. We want, actually, as it happens, to vote down this broken back deal that Theresa May's brought forward. But on the back of that, if Parliament can take control, can give a clear mandate to negotiators to get something better, let it happen that way. If not, let's look for that general election, because actually we do need a government that can command a majority in Parliament. We haven't got one now. That's really important. And command a majority round an understood programme for the British public. That would be the logical kind of vote. What Labour has said, obviously, if all else fails, then of course that a second referendum might come into play. But we're a long way from that conversation yet. And I think it's important that people recognise that at the moment it's up to Parliament to make the responsible decisions that would suit the jobs first Brexit that Britain voted for 2 years ago.
OK, Tony Lloyd, thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you, Sophie.